Kia ora katatou, ko jazz tuku ingoa. I'm the Executive Director of Business and Industry Partnerships at UCO, and I'm also a member of the Manawatū Board, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here with us today. Firstly, before we get started, for those in the room, because we do have a virtual audience today, some housekeeping. So feel free to have your cell phones on, just make sure they're on silent or vibrate. If there is an emergency, we will make our way directly out this door, out the front and into the car park. The toilets for the gentlemen in the room are to my right, and if ladies want to follow around reception, further right. Masks are strongly encouraged, clearly not for our online audience, but for those in the room, please feel free to stay masked up if you prefer. For those of you online, you'll notice there's a chat function, and we really encourage you to use that as the morning proceeds. Today's lineup, I'm going to go around and I'm going to intro these amazing panellists as speakers, and then we're going to hear more about their journeys. At about 12:50, we're going to open up the room to questions so that you can ask what you want to know about their tech journeys. We'll then do a little wrap up, and for those that are physically here, we'll be having lunch. Sorry, those of you online who have missed out. Women have always played a massive role in advancing digital technology. From its inception with Grace Hopper and her machine-independent programming languages to women behind the Apollo space missions, all the way to today's Sarah Wojcicki of Google and YouTube, women have left an indelible mark on the world of technology. So why is it that women only make up 25% of digital technology sector here in New Zealand? These women are going to share hopefully some insights into that as well. Tech careers can be highly paid and flexible, as well as give you the ability to work in loads of different industries with some really cool tech. Getting women into IT careers is important, and it starts with education. UCO's Inspiring Women event is all about showcasing local Manawatū women in tech and their amazing career journeys, what inspires them, and why they are passionate about IT. Without further ado, let me introduce you to our Inspiring Women in Technology. I don't want to steal their thunder, so I'll tell you who they are and where they're from, and then they'll tell you a little bit about themselves. So, introducing the panel. First up, we have Kate Hindman, CTO, that translates to Chief Technology Officer of Orpha IT. We have Sarah Allison, Head of IT Operations at Orpha IT. Hannah Love, Product Owner from Software Engineer at Orpha IT, and Emma Glendining, Project Manager from Yorb Limited. So if I can hand over to you, Kate, to intro yourself. Thank you.
Hi, thanks very much. Hi, everybody. It's a great privilege to be here today. So my name is Kate Hindman, and I'm currently Chief Technology Officer for Orpha IT. So heavily involved in the strategic direction of building Orpha IT and growing it as a global provider to customers. We specialise in supporting our customers with their mission-critical document optimisation, and we do that in industries such as life sciences, helping with things like the production of medical solutions and drugs for end users. We also work with customers like Boeing around their aircraft safety documentation, so we have an ability to help our customers with really, really important things to make their businesses successful. In parallel to that role as a Chief Technology Officer, I've also had the opportunity over the last 7 years to also be involved in governance roles, so director of a number of boards, which is pretty fulfilling in that I'm helping grow organisations, whether they're startups or large scale, in terms of bringing my technology skills to bear in terms of helping those customers move forward as well. So that's, I guess, a little bit about me.
Thank you, Kate. Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm Head of IT Operations, as I was introduced. So I have quite a varied role. I have the infrastructure team with me, the system engineers who maintain the security and availability and reliability of our customer environments. So we're entirely in AWS, so we don't have any on-prem hardware. I also have the DevOps engineers who are really about removing the roadblocks for the devs. They're about adding automation and optimization into our business processes as much as possible and removing some of those barriers that might prevent us getting our code and our product features in front of our customers. And I also have the privilege of having the customer support desk under me who are really advocates for our customer and their interaction with our products and feedback, as well as kind of fixing the incidents and challenges that they might have using our products as well. So a multi-headed role which gives me lots of opportunities and challenge.
Fantastic. Hannah?
Hi, I'm Hannah Love. I am a product owner at Author-It Software. I started out at Author-It as a software engineer. That was over 12 months ago now, and then 4 months in I was promoted to a product owner. And as my role as a product owner, I am mainly responsible for prioritizing and maintaining product backlogs. I work closely with product, translating product initiatives into actionable chunks that engineers can work on. And I also kind of liaise between the product or the customer-facing side of the business and the engineering side of the business, so some of that translation and liaison work there. And I've been doing that for about 8 months. Yeah.
Bit of a newbie, thank you. Emma?
Hi, my name's Emma. I'm the project manager at Yorb here in Palmerston North. Prior to this, after completing my degree at UCOL, I worked as the project coordinator for Yorb for the replacement of their IT service management system. In my current role, I am handed a project or a large piece of work that we've sold. I analyse the steps that are involved to complete the work, who's going to need to be involved, how much time it's going to take them, considering their current workload as well, creating the project schedule to agree with the client. The key aspects of this role are ensuring that the communication lines are kept open between the project team and the key stakeholders, that the work is delivered within the given constraints, budgets, timeframes, etc. And that the client is satisfied with the result and it's delivered to an acceptable standard. At any given time, I would have around 13 projects underway simultaneously. And I've also just taken over all onboardings and offboardings as well, which can require a lot of coordination, as when you're looking after a company's IT services, there's a lot of moving parts to be taken into account. I can honestly say that I love my job, and I was a stay-at-home mum returning to the workforce, so I'm really looking forward to talking with you further and answering any questions you may have.
Thank you, Emma. As you can see, we have a phenomenal panel here today with a very eclectic background, and they will have all been on their own journeys to get to this point. So we asked them to ponder some questions so that they could prepare a little bit of a discussion for us around their journey so far, the reasons they came into tech, the pitfalls they may have found, or the successes. And those of you in the audience and online can then listen and think of those questions that we didn't think about that you want to know, and we'll cover those off in the Q&A. So Kate, if we can come back to you and your journey.
Yeah, so when I was back in year 13 or 7th form back then, and I was thinking about what I want to do with my life, tech wasn't really a big thing, particularly for girls at that stage. A little bit of programming in the last year of high school, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do, other than I thought technology is going to be growing and changing over time. And I also
Can we just pause there? We just got a large school group that looks like they're going to enter the room.
Sure.
So that might cause less disruption for the audience. Come on in and make yourself comfortable, guys. Lovely to see you here. I'll just quickly recap the housekeeping. If there's an emergency, you'll see us all running from the building. Just follow us. All right, fantastic, and welcome. So that you've just missed the speakers introducing their titles, but you haven't actually missed their journeys, so you've come in at the perfect time. So, Kate, thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, so basically I thought tech's going to be the way of the world, and I also thought that they're going to, the world's going to want to be equal opportunity employers, and so that really kind of sparked my initial interest. And so I came up to Massey and spent 4 years up here doing a Bachelor of Tech degree. Got exposed to some pretty challenging and difficult things that at times I didn't really know what I was doing, but I knew that what it kind of taught me at the time was overcoming those challenges gave me confidence to keep trying and solving problems, which has been really important in tech roles I've had over my career. And essentially once I got out of university, I started my life or my career as a software engineer. And so for me, what was so cool about that was you're pretty much creating something from nothing. So it's really artistic and creative, but from a digital perspective. And I got a lot of really great opportunities working with different companies. I worked for a fund manager building unit pricing systems initially. Went and did my OE and managed to contract with lots of different companies and learned a lot of cool stuff. I was really fortunate when I returned to New Zealand in the late 1990s, where I actually joined up with what went on to become a group of really amazing people when we co-founded one of New Zealand's most successful fintechs, which is still privately owned. And on that 17-year journey, we built a company out of a Wellington office, and we grew the business, hired people, mentored new graduates. I moved through lots of different roles. So I moved out of actually coding into leading technology teams, managing infrastructure, customer support, all sorts of cool facets of what you can get involved in a tech industry, meeting customers, pitching for deals, and all that kind of came out of me starting as a software engineer and having people recognise my skills and talents and offering the opportunity to be part of that more influential journey as a co-founder of a company. And once I sort of moved out of working in that organisation, I wanted to move into a more strategic and governance kind of role, which is where I started becoming a director of companies, where I could use all my tech skills and learnings of how you build a company and build teams and build systems and processes, and not necessarily have to do those jobs anymore, but really have insights and understanding of what it takes for management teams who are trying to build their own companies to do those things and provide guidance and support and mentoring. So that's kind of been where my journey's sort of started and come from, and that all started from basically taking a punt and going, this tech thing, I think it's going to be important, and that's kind of how I got into where I am at the moment.
Fantastic. I find that really interesting, in that you've talked about such a lengthy career going through all these different pathways, and then we're going to have someone with perspective who's 8 months into a new role. So I think that's really, really important. Apparently it's also wet in Auckland today, it says here on the online chat, so we're not the only ones feeling the rain coming down. But if we move on to Sarah, that'd be fantastic.
Cool. So when I actually left high school and went to university, I had no idea what I wanted to do. All I knew was I was really good at maths. So I actually went to Massey to major in calculus because, differential equations are really exciting. And I really, really do love maths, but I was just worried, career-wise, what am I going to do with a maths degree? And so I did a Bachelor of Information Sciences, and as part of that, it was compulsory for me to do computer science, statistics, calculus, and information systems. And I kind of fell in love with information systems. So back then, it was really around learning about data and data management, data structures, relational database theory. It also was about the basics around networking and computer systems and how they communicated and things like that. So that really suited my logical brain and kind of set me off in an interest of IT. So when I left university, I actually was a system engineer, but taking computers apart and putting it back together was not one of my strengths. But I was really good at working with people and being able to help build relationships and solve their problems, and actually being able to make tech not so scary for them. So I tended to move more into the kind of support space than the taking computers apart space. From there, I actually went into database administration and really got to use some of my data background. Then I moved into business intelligence, where I focused a lot on data warehouse design and reporting and analytics and how people are using the data to actually make decisions. So a very, very different career path to Kate, in the sense is I never wrote code other than at university. And then I guess from there I ended up in the architecture space, where again I was kind of helping set the strategic direction for investment of IT, and now I've come back to ops and back into sort of that infrastructure space. So I think for me, I think the biggest advice I can provide is that there is such a wide range of opportunity in tech. It's not just one thing, it's multiples of things. And it's not until you kind of necessarily get into it, you actually understand what they are and can pick your own path. The other advice I can say is the opportunity that scares you a little is probably the most interesting, the most challenging, and one you'll learn the most. So don't ever be afraid to step out of your comfort zone and go, actually, I'm going to give that a go. And I've done that with quite a few roles. When I was looking to change recently, and when I joined Authority, I had the opportunity to be an enterprise architect, which was like, carry on doing what you do now and you're comfortable at, or go into head of IT operations and look at AWS, which you've never seen and used in your life. I took the opportunity that scared me the most because I knew it would be more interesting and more challenging and would give me future career options. So that's definitely my advice on your journeys is keep your eye out for those and put your hand up. Play to your strengths, and there is so much out there.
Thank you, Hannah. As someone who lives my life uncomfortably, I find that really inspiring that you actually have to just put yourself out there sometimes. So thank you for sharing that. Sorry, Sarah. Hannah, if we've moved to your journey now.
Yeah, mine's quite different to Kate and Sarah's. I actually left high school at 16 because I thought that I had failed my level 3s. Turns out I hadn't. But, once I was out, you can't go back. Not good advice. But eventually I went through a few admin roles. I did a little bit of kind of travel and tourism study and wasn't really happy. So I decided to go back to uni. And I was in my early 20s at this point. And so I enrolled in university. And I enrolled because I wanted to study. I knew I wanted a degree. I just didn't know what I wanted to have a degree in. And I was like, I just want something that sounds really smart. So someone said, computer science. I was like, that sounds like rocket science. That sounds really hard. But no, I enrolled at Vic in computer science. But then in my first year, after I passed my first semester, I dropped out because I became pregnant. So I was a solo parent. And in my first year with my son, I decided to re-enroll at Massey and try to finish. And I had a daughter during that time. I finished with a diploma in science and technology at Massey. And I had severe postnatal depression at the time. So I decided I really needed to get out of the house. And my partner at the time really pushed me to just put myself out there and just apply for any programming role. The worst they're going to say is no, but you're getting the experience with those interviews. And so I did. And funnily enough, the first company that I interviewed with, in Squared, they're a telecommunications software company, they took me on as an intern. So I was super lucky in that role. I managed to do a whole bunch of hatted roles. I was employed as a software engineer, but got exposed to tons. And I spent 5 years there, learned as much as I could, and eventually realized it's a very small company, so I needed to grow. And so I applied I had a small stint at Massey and then applied at Authorate Software as a software engineer. And within my first 4 months, I think because of all my experience in Square and because of all the things I was exposed to, there wasn't really one defined thing about my role that I really loved. And so when I went into the software engineering role, I was like, I'm pretty sure software engineering is the thing that I really love. Went into it, but I felt it's not really what I love. I enjoy it, but it's not my passion, So as Sarah said, there was a role that came up, a product owner role, and I was like, I'm not quite sure if I'm qualified enough to do this. And it was scary, but someone suggested it, and someone said, you should just do it. At least they'll know that you're interested. And I did, and I got it, and I love it. So, that's my journey, a little bit different to Sarah and the traditional path, I think.
Thanks, Hannah. I think what I take from that is it's okay to try many different things until you find that passion and that real enthusiasm. I don't think we go and buy something out of a box and it's all right straight away. So thank you for that. Emma, moving on to you.
Well, as Sarah said, do something that makes you uncomfortable. I hate public speaking, so please excuse my notes. As I mentioned in my introduction, I was a stay-at-home mum with 2 young kids, and I was working part-time on the family farm, doing accounts and running an export company that we owned. Now, I don't know about you, but I have one of those brains that needs to be kept busy. I decided I wanted to do my own thing and get away from the farm. But with 2 young children and no qualifications, I knew that if I went looking for a job, I was going to be looking at minimum wage. One of the other things that mums need to consider is that until your child reaches 3 and you qualify for the 30 hours of free ECE, any additional income from working is offset by the cost of daycare, which makes it almost pointless. Having taken this into consideration, I decided that it was an opportune time to study. I still remember telling my partner when he came home and him looking at me like, yeah, she's finally lost it, but backing me all the same. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to make a lot of money, and I also didn't want to enter a dying industry. So I went on to Trade Me Jobs and arranged it by salary, and it was abundantly clear that IT was where I was headed. So I signed up for the Bachelor of Information and Communications Technology at UCOL, but one of the helpful staff advised I'd be better to undertake the Certificate for Advanced Computer Users first, which only meant another 6 months. I absolutely loved it. Coming from trudging around home with a baby vomit on me every day was Groundhog Day, and quite frankly the conversation was pretty drab. To heading into UCOL on my own, I had time to think and reflect in the car. I clean clothes, I can grab a coffee and sit down and just soak up the knowledge from my incredible lecturers. I had a purpose, and I could literally feel the investment that I'd made in myself paying dividends. To begin with, I was worried whether I was doing the right thing, sticking my kids into daycare, whether I should be at home spending more quality time with them. But after I started, my fears just disappeared. I began to realise that it wasn't quality time. I was frazzled, I was run down and exhausted. I had no self-worth anymore, and my children were getting that frazzled, run-down woman as their mother. Now they were busy socialising with other children, learning new things, and when I returned home, they were getting a much better version of me. Even though I was learning so much every day, I was no longer mentally exhausted. My brain was getting exercise, I had clarity, I could cope with anything that was thrown at me, whereas before I would have just burst into tears. From there, I thrived. I completed my CACU certificate and began my degree, which I completed over the next 3 years, while at the same time building a house and living in a caravan in a hay shed. In 2019, I began my internship at Yorb and have never left. And at the beginning of 2020, I graduated with a double major in business and systems analysis and project management, and I'd done it. I continued on at Yorb. With my boss leaving, I was tasked with taking over the IT service management system replacement project, which was behind schedule with an imminent go-live date. While this was very much being tossed into the deep end, I'm also hugely grateful for this, as no company in their right mind would have trusted an intern or a new grad with a project of this magnitude, so I was extremely fortunate to get that experience. Once the system was live, I continued as the system administrator for the next 2 years. And in late 2020, knowing my desire to advance into project management, I was given the chance to create a project management framework and begin managing the projects for Yorb. As this was a new role for Yorb, some of the challenges I faced was firstly creating this all from scratch without having a senior project manager to look up to and learn from. I also had to prove myself and my worth to the engineers who had never had a PM and felt, they weren't convinced it was worthwhile. I'm not sure I've ever really had any challenges directly related to my gender, so I'm quite fortunate on that front. Standout moments for me would definitely be picking up and delivering the IT service management project, also obtaining my Prince 2 and Agile certifications. But mostly I get my biggest kicks from client feedback, as at the end of the day that's what I'm striving for. So to hear a client come back saying that they're absolutely thrilled with how the project went and the outcome, that having me in batting for them and communicating with them every step of the way made everything so easy, and they knew if anything came up I would sort it. That's fantastic, and that's by far the most satisfying achievement. Something I once read, which really resonated with me and I constantly think about, is imagine if you from 5 years ago could see you now. She would be so proud, keep going. And this couldn't be truer. I think back to 5 and maybe 6 years ago now, where I was at home with kids, doubting my worth, struggling away on one income and feeling as though I wasn't contributing. And now here I am. No matter what your situation is, no matter how hard that journey looks, if you're thinking about studying for a career in IT, stop thinking about the reasons why you couldn't do it and just get on with it. It's a booming industry with endless opportunities that can take you all around the world. And being a female is not a disadvantage in this industry, and in some respects I think it's an advantage. We're better communicators, we all know that. We're empathetic, which helps us relate to clients and resolve their issues, which is relevant in every role from support centre to a business analyst. We can multitask, increasing our productivity. We're able to prioritise things quickly, great at time management, and thorough. All these sought-after skills are instinctive to women, and we need to use these for our advantage, not just for raising families, but also in our careers. Who said we can't have both? That decision to study was by far the best thing I've ever done, aside from my children, of course. And I'm so grateful every day that I did it. I love my job. I work for an awesome supportive company with a team that's more like a big hectic family than co-workers. And who knows where the next 5 years will take me.
Wow, Emma, for someone who doesn't like public speaking, that was really eloquent. Well done, you. Fantastic. And what I took away from you're talking about perseverance, about taking risks, about being uncomfortable, but then at the other threshold, also understanding that balance. And I think many of us as working parents or having working parents absolutely have to understand that. It's part of your career. They don't sit separately. It's just one big beast. So another thing I took from all of your journeys is that none of you sort of have gone on this pathway alone. So if we could just move around the group and talk about, who was a mentor or a role model for you during this time, or who influenced you to go in a different direction. Kate.
So I guess for me, in the initial sort of move into getting involved in a tech degree, my dad was actually quite influential in why I went down that path as well. He never stereotyped what a daughter should do. He was an electrical engineer from his own career, and he was just really supportive and recognised that I was quite interested in solving problems and analytical and how I kind of operated. So my initial support came from him. Once I got involved in the roles I was doing, I guess for me, at the time, there weren't a great deal of, let's say, female mentors around me to look up to. I was somewhat of a bit of a trailblazer in what I was trying to do. It was very unusual to see software engineer females around me. I was one of the few. So I didn't really have that support. But I guess my managers around me, they were really, back then, quite inclusive and diverse in their thinking. And they never, for instance, favoured other people over me. They could see my competency. To sort of echo some of the other points that have been made here today, it's a sort of kind of being brave and courageous was incredibly important, because giving things a go, you learn stuff, but it also shows people that you're prepared to take things on. And so once I sort of demonstrated that, then more stuff just kept coming, and I just kept thinking, well, I actually don't know what this opportunity means, and it's kind of scary, but I just gave it a go. And I think that just kind of built, the different opportunities kept coming, and it was really amazing, and it opened up so many doors. For me, just in terms of other support, my story's a bit different to others, but unusual in that, I've had an incredibly supportive husband. We've got 2 teenage sons, and for me to do some of the crazy things I've done and the opportunities I've taken, he's been over the years, the main child caregiver. It meant that I could be working for global organisations, have my life in Wellington, but at the drop of a hat fly over to a business meeting in London to be part of a major deal. That was a lot of fun and excitement, but that couldn't have happened without a really supportive husband that was actually doing the reverse role to what is traditional. So those are things that have been in my life that have made things possible as well. And so that was very unusual for the times. And obviously now there's a lot more equality and approaches in terms of how people have set up their partnerships with, and support. But yeah, that was kind of for me how things have worked out really well. And I'm really appreciative of that support I got and to make those things possible for me, and still have children and have a really successful life with my family and in the career I wanted to pursue as well. So I have had both, which is really fortunate. But it's been hard, but it is possible.
Absolutely love that. I think if we were at a conference like this or a presentation 15 years ago, we wouldn't be talking about that balance at home or that part of your life. You'd just be talking about the job. So I really appreciate that you're willing to be frank on that sort of stuff. So Sarah, what about you? Role models or mentors along the way?
I guess a few things leap to mind. I guess it's 25 years, a few birthdays that I've been working in tech. I too feel like I haven't really faced discrimination or barriers because of my gender, so I've always appreciated, I guess, my managers for that. And I've definitely had a couple of managers who have absolutely gone out of their way to give me opportunities and support me, which has made a big difference. When it comes to, I guess, general kind of leadership, when I was working at Massey, I did have the opportunity to go into a sort of a woman in leadership program, and I also had the opportunity to do my master in management with the support of the university. So I think sometimes the mentorship isn't necessarily in tech, it's just how to be a good person and a contributing member of a team and how to manage and lead effectively. So those opportunities have made a big difference. I too have been very fortunate to have a husband who has done the lion's share of running the household. We have 2 children, one older daughter and one transgender teenager. So having that support at home has made a huge difference for me as well. That's been a real blessing. So I think find people that kind of build you up and support you with them. And, you know, find someone who you can have as a confidant when going is a bit tough, that you can actually bounce things off that you know is going to be non-judgmental. One of the things I've really enjoyed when I've had the opportunity to be a mentor is to help people find their journey. Because I certainly knew when I started in tech, I didn't know I was going to be a head of IT ops or an enterprise architect, right? Like when I started, I was just like, this is my space. So, you know, finding people who can support you on that journey and then also helping other people navigate that journey and look at where their strengths are. I've definitely had the privilege to do that a few times, which has been super exciting. So, yeah.
And I agree. I think Sarah has a really valid point there about where you look for your role models and your mentors. So it won't always be someone within your organisation. It may not even be a teacher. It could be somebody that you meet somewhere that just inspires you. So always keep your mind open to those opportunities.
Yeah. And don't hesitate to ask them, right? Because more often than not, they'll actually say, yeah, I'm happy to have a conversation. I'm happy to support you. And yeah.
Yeah, always ask. Absolutely. Hannah, role models or mentors that have brought you along the way?
Yeah, when I started studying, I decided to go back to study. I had my son, so definitely inspiring me to, go somewhere was, I want to be an inspiration for my children, but also I wouldn't have been able to do that without the support of my family. Starting out my career and them, the constant, you're really smart, and something I really deal with or have to cope with is imposter syndrome. And so, having that kind of backup chorus really helps. And then, starting out in the career, my ex-partner, pushing me to, believing in me. And I guess, that's that imposter syndrome again. I don't think I can. No, you can. And then my husband, very, very, very similar to Kate and Sarah, like he takes on the lion's share of the domestic stuff, and he puts down work at the drop of a hat and picks up the children and makes sure they get to school and have lunch and all of that stuff. And, I'm always grateful for that. I'm constantly grateful because it's allowed me to grow in my career and go forward. In terms of role models, I don't really have any specific people. I don't think, anyone's like, the perfect role model. I think I like to take, different aspects of lots of different people, and that's females and males and everything in between, because there are so many things to learn and, and so many influences, and I often change how I work depending on the people that I work with. But I have to say, the first company I worked in Squid, predominantly males, but then moving into a space like Authority Software, who has tons, like it was the first time I worked in a tech team which has like lots of females, and it was amazing, awe-inspiring, being able to see women leaders and thinking that could be me, right? So it really inspires me to continue my career journey, and what's next. So, yeah.
And it sounds like you'll continue on a journey. You seem like one of those really curious people that's just going to keep going. So fantastic to hear. Emma, what about you, role models? You sound like you're very self-driven to go out there and study and move into the field, but was there anybody that sort of piqued your interest or supported you along the way?
Not piqued my interest. I think I definitely drive myself, and I'm my biggest critic as well. But supported me, yes, definitely. My fiance and my kids, really. They were fantastic. I do still predominantly run the household as well, but as you can imagine, sometimes I might come across a little bit harsh or screaming chaos, and he keeps coming back and is just the voice of reason to calm me down and, say it's all going to be fine and we'll get there. So, yeah, eternally grateful for that, and definitely couldn't have done it without them. In terms of role models, I'd have to say one of my lecturers, Carter, was someone I really looked up to and admired, and some of her achievements are mind-boggling. So to think that I could grow up to be anything like her, sort of was really an inspiration.
And we're very lucky to still have her a member of our staff, so later on if you have an opportunity to talk to Carter, that would be amazing. We've got a lot of stuff going on in the chat, and we will, for those of you online, get to that at about 10 to 12 and start asking some of those questions. But you've talked about so many opportunities and being self-driven and motivated and having role models. In any complex career, there are barriers, whether they're our own through imposter syndrome or because there aren't opportunities locally. I mean, Kate talks about a phenomenal experience, about able to travel overseas and do things remotely, but that's not available in all professions. So if you could talk about some of the barriers or pitfalls that you've seen or overcome.
Gosh. Maybe come back to me, actually. I'll have a think about it.
No pressure.
Putting Sarah in the hot seat. Here we go.
There has been a couple of challenges through the years. Definitely, and I'd like to think it's not as prominent now, but kind of, 10 years ago, significantly older people, there was a challenge. I've only had one case where I had a very strong female that bullied me. And I did actually have to stand up for myself and have some conversations around that, because that made, especially because we were both on the tech leadership team, so it was incredibly challenging. So yes, there is the occasion where people either don't have confidence in you, so they question everything you do, or unfortunately in the bullying instances it was kind of like, well, I came up through the school of hard knocks, so I'm going to pass that favour on. Well, I just feel like culturally the world's moved on from that, and that's not the environment that we foster anymore, and those sort of challenges, we don't have to prove anything as females in the tech industry. We are absolutely respected and valued for what we can bring to the table technically, as well as some of those softer skills that we bring as well. So I feel like I haven't had a lot, but there are definitely times, and you just have to work out. I'm quite I don't hit things head on. I'm probably a little bit more, like, okay, what am I going to do about this situation? Plan for it, and then go on that journey, and probably a little bit PC on how I do it. So I won't ram someone head on, but yeah, that was a challenge.
If it helps, I can add my bit now.
Absolutely. Jump in.
I've thought about it. I didn't want to sound arrogant, but I've actually, essentially it's nearly been 30 years since I started my first job in tech, and I think I've been really fortunate in that. I don't know where it comes from, but a fundamental sense of confidence I have as a person, and I've used that as something to give me strength to move through some, what to other people may well have been challenging and really intimidating situations. So I think because I had that innate confidence, I was fortunate that I didn't get taken advantage of, overlooked, underpaid. I sort of was able to bring my capability, demonstrate it, and I was fortunate enough to be in different organisations or have to different leaders that appreciated me, and I never felt like I was being taken advantage of, which I know is not the case for a lot of people. So that's why I sort of was a bit taken aback when you asked me what were the challenges. Yeah. But what I would say is that, having said that, even though I definitely could bring an outward confidence to how I operate, there's still a lot of internal battles that I have, from being a sort of essentially super driven, perfectionist kind of person, and at times, probably because I wanted to prove myself, because I was the only woman in an entire team of 30 engineers, or I was the only tech leader on the tech leadership team, you sort of felt like you had to prove yourself more, even if technically you didn't. And so at times that drove me to be more of a workaholic, and that's been quite challenging at times from a personal perspective and balancing time with family. So for me that would probably, I would say, has been one of my biggest challenges. And sort of as cultures and organisations have changed in recent times, which is really positive, it means that it's okay not to have to prove yourself more than others. But certainly in my first part of my career, I would have leaned into more working a lot harder than other people because I felt I kind of had to, and that would probably be the biggest thing I've faced over my career. But I feel like that is not, it's not irrelevant, but I think it's less relevant than ever before in the cultures of organisations that we now see in today, around us today.
Fantastic. Hannah or Emma, do you have anything to add to those experiences?
I'm actually the opposite with confidence, I think. As I mentioned earlier, I do suffer from imposter syndrome, and for those who aren't aware of what that is, it's when you doubt your experience or your abilities, and you kind of just feel like you're a fraud, basically. And you kind of, sometimes I found myself sitting at my desk going, they're gonna find out I can't do this, they're gonna find out I can't do this. And so working through that has been a massive personal challenge. And some ways that I've managed to cope with that is just being open and just talking to people about it, because you don't actually realize or recognize how many people actually suffer from similar issues and experiences. And so by doing that, I was able to get that kind of validation back. They were able to give kind of constructive feedback back to me, so I could know where I might be lacking in experience and where I'm doing really well. So it's not just you're amazing. It was that kind of really real feedback, and also validation. You're not alone, and there are lots of people feel like that. So just having that open conversation sorry, you're kicked off the panel.
It wasn't a phone call, it was a stupid alarm.
For me, imposter syndrome has been a large part of my difficulties, and also burnout, actually, with the workaholic stuff. It's really easy in IT to burn out because you're trying to push yourself, prove yourself, or you've got imposter syndrome, and so you're trying to overcompensate. And it's really important to recognize your limits, and it's okay to say no, and set some hard boundaries about when you want to finish work and all of that stuff, all that healthy work-life balance. And burnout is really real. It's when you are under significant pressure for a long period of time. And so I've experienced that quite a few times over the years for various reasons. And each time it's a learning curve. Okay, what am I going to take away from this? I don't want to get into this hole again. So I think those are the main two difficulties I've faced. And I just want to point out one thing on being a female in tech. I don't feel like I've necessarily been discriminated against as a woman, but culturally, I've worked with a lot of different cultures throughout my career. And it's not the same in every culture. In New Zealand, we're very lucky, but working with overseas clients, or even clients in New Zealand who have come from overseas, you can face a little bit of discrimination like that. And it's just, you can talk to me or no one. It's your choice. So yeah, those are probably the top three difficulties I've faced.
Yeah, and I think they're really important, Hannah. I think that understanding that when things go wrong or things keep reoccurring, you can always take a learning from them. And that's important, to take what you can from a situation that may not have been ideal. Emma, any thoughts?
In terms of being a female, the only discrimination that I've ever had is you hear that water cooler mumbling around the office, she only got the job because she's hot or something. Which, while I should probably should have addressed it. It doesn't bother me. I just think, oh, that's a nice compliment, and which is probably absolutely not their intention, but turn it around and make it a positive. But again, other than that, we're really fortunate in New Zealand that there's not that discrimination and bias against women in IT. Other challenges I've faced is probably time management and that balance between, being a mum and having kids and sports commitments and, friends and homework and all of that, and juggling a full-time work week in a fairly stressful job. With my training, UCOL was fantastic for that, just purely because they did school holiday hours, so you get school holidays off, which was great because a lot of daycares closed for school holidays. So that made it really easy. The lecture and tutorial times were all fairly school hour friendly, so I could get back and pick the kids up and do all of my mum duties. And now, having moved into the workforce, I was quite stressed about how I was going to balance that and juggle that with a full-time role. But it's really been fantastic. Who I work for, have been completely supportive, and they understand a work-life balance. If I know that if I turn up 20 minutes late because the morning was chaos, I can just work 20 minutes late, and it swings and roundabouts. Some days you're late, some days you're early, and there's a lot more flexibility there than there has been to date. Also, I think the COVID pandemic's been fantastic for, don't get me wrong, but just for changing the dynamics of how we work, and creating this hybrid working environment, which is, everyone's realised actually it does work, we can do it. So now I'm fortunate enough to have the flexibility to work remotely a couple of days a week, which helps again with the family life and, being able to just get the kids to school, jump on my laptop, and I can chuck tea on or put on a load of washing. It just makes things a lot more manageable than it would have been once upon a time.
Absolutely agree. So we're at about 10:02 now, and we've had our online audience very, very busy in the chat. So I think we'll move to some Q&As there first, and then once we've done the online, we'll get a roving mic going, and if you've got those burning questions that you want to ask, we'll move on to those. So first up, we've got Kathy O'Sullivan. Kia ora, Kathy Sullivan here, editor for this CIO New Zealand. Really enjoying the kōrero. Questions for the panel. What practical things should other CIOs be doing to help get more women into IT? And we're not going to do the creeping hand of death where we go from left to right anymore. What we're going to do is we're going to call what they call popcorn. So if you've got the answer, just go with it.
I think one of the big things is promoting the wide range of opportunities that there are in tech, that it's not just one thing or two things. It's a multitude, and to be available for mentoring and growing. So, reaching out to schools and training institutions to actually say, hey, look, there's lots of opportunities. How can I help you navigate that? How do I help you develop the skills to be effective? And just being available to be able to pass on what we were given when we were at that stage of our journey.
I really agree. When I finished when I was studying and finishing up my diploma, the natural progression felt like, you just go into software engineering. I genuinely did not know any other roles within IT. You can't go to a website and say, by the way, maybe you can now, but when I was doing it, this is what you need to do to get to this point in your career, or this is what you need to do if you want to do this. And oh, by the way, do you know a product owner exists? I didn't. And it wasn't until I started at Author where I was exposed to all these different roles. Making that readily available, or, kind of advertising more what you can do, because there are so many awesome roles even outside of our roles, right? So, yeah.
Anyone else? No? So Steve's trying to jump the queue here by asking questions online, even though he's in the room. And if you don't know Steve, he is the CEO of Manawa Tech here, which is a fantastic community of tech in the Manawatu. His question to the panel is, do you have to study at a tertiary level to get a job in tech?
I'd say no.
No.
Maybe a long time ago, yes, but because technology is changing so much and so quickly, I think there's a benefit in getting some basic building blocks, which doesn't take a university degree. Maybe you can do like a 6-month course in something. It just kind of gives you insights to understand what it might be about, but increasingly it's all about putting different building blocks together to work stuff out, and it's no longer this sort of specific, you've got to do this 4-year degree in just this, and that's going to get you a foot in the door. A lot of it is about understanding and getting those basic skills, but also being brave and putting yourself out there. More than ever before, the tech industry is under extreme pressure. We do not have enough talented people to feed the amazing pipelines that we have out of New Zealand to grow amazing businesses. So I don't think there's ever been a time in New Zealand history to be jumping in and trying to get involved in tech. Even to the extent, and I'm not joking, if as an example, if you like writing software or playing around with stuff, you could reach out to a company as an intern and just say, hey, I'm still at high school, but I'd like to do some stuff on the side, and companies would entertain stuff like that. That's how desperate we are for tech talent. So it's a way to kind of get your foot in the door as a junior, but people just want people who are interested in tech involved in their organisations in any way they can. So I would say definitely don't need to go and get like big 4-year degrees to get involved in this stuff anymore. So I think it's pretty awesome at the moment for everybody.
Yeah, I think that innate curiosity is critical, right? Like, you want to be able to solve a problem, you want to be able to explore. I do value what I learnt in my qualifications, and that's definitely helped me, but I don't think it's essential. I think only one of the 17 people in my team currently have a degree, for example.
So you talk about that innate curiosity, which is absolutely key, and I think that's where passion comes from. But for fundamentals, as some of the high school students here today, as they come out and consider a career in tech, myself did not like maths, like it now. But what's the pathway? What do they need to be looking towards?
I think just trying, jumping in. There's tons of online resources now to, for example, learn programming. You don't need to wait until you're going to university. There is lots of free resources online, YouTube, and just, as Kate said, reaching out for internships. I'm terrible at maths as well, and
Such a
sorry.
outside of IT, of course.
I cannot. My 11-year-old daughter, she makes fun of me. She will ask me really hard maths questions and then laugh at me when I can't answer them. No, there. And I think I want to stress as well is, there's technical skills, but there's also the soft skills, right? Like, don't underestimate how important soft skills are, because especially in my role, and probably actually all of our roles, it's really important to be able to negotiate with people, to navigate difficult conversations, all of that sort of stuff, time management, facilitation. So when you're going online and maybe looking at resources and learning how to program and stuff, make sure you're working on your soft skills as well. And
That first job's going to be the hardest job to get, right? After that, it tends to be a lot easier. But unfortunately, that first one, that's the hardest one.
I would also say there's a lot of talk about maths, but really maths is not what a lot of people who are successful in tech know anything about, quite frankly. I mean, I personally had to do a lot of maths for my degree, and I really didn't enjoy it at all. There was all sorts of crazy engineering algebra stuff I've never used. But plenty of people get involved in all sorts of tech roles, like particularly as an example, there's amazing software applications out there now that digital visual artists will use for video effects and cool stuff like that, getting into movie development and stuff, and they certainly didn't go and spend all their time studying maths subjects. So don't think that in order to get anywhere in tech you have to be amazing in maths. That is not the case at all. There's certainly going to be some specialist areas where maths is critical, but for the most tech roles it's not.
Fantastic. There's some phenomenal feedback online, guys. They're really, really coming in thick and fast, and everyone's quite inspired. This one's in the news quite a bit. It's around show the salary and pay equity. So Tamara asks, is pay quite transparent in the tech jobs you've been in? Do you know if you're getting pay equity compared to male counterparts?
So, pay transparency in organisations is in general in New Zealand is not where I think it should be. There's no sort of regulatory mandates that organisations, private or publicly listed, have to actually expose pay information, and that should change, because if you can't see it, you can't understand what the gap is. So I'm a big fan of legislating for that kind of reporting. I certainly, from an ASC perspective, we don't have full transparency across the whole organisation, but within certain teams we be as transparent as we can as a group across large, in the tech, certainly the tech team that I'm currently leading, we have transparency of information within all the functional leadership areas, so we can all see that we're paying our teams equitably across our own teams. Another company I'm involved in as a director, they have full transparency. Everybody knows what everybody gets paid. So, you know, that's really quite inspiring, but there are some challenges to get to that, but I'm certainly a big fan of it, and I think it's important.
Yeah, so I definitely feel for ASC, and also when I was at Massey had very salary bands, so you know, it's not like you could then go, okay, you have this gender or you have this experience, so we're going to pay you 10k less than this person over here. Like, so that just wasn't possible. So there was a very clear band. ASC, we don't have those kind of bands, but I definitely know as a leader that that's important, and we definitely have pay equity from that perspective within ASC, as Kate said.
Fantastic. I'm going to ask Paula now to come and grab a microphone. We're going to open up to the room, so if you've got that burning question, get ready to put your hand up. As an incentive to encourage you to ask those questions, I think we've also got a box of goodies somewhere. So, are there anybody that wants to go first? Paula will be with you momentarily, caller.
What? Is it on? Is it on? Yeah. One thing I've noticed is that there's a lot of politics in IT, and the men seem to like to play political games at a higher level. Do you think that more women in IT would reduce that or influence it at all? And then, if so, how?
Good question. I think some of it does actually depend on the organisation. I think one of the things that I've appreciated at ASC is the lack of politics and game playing. There is a lot more transparency and upfront conversations that are still respectful. So that's made a big difference. I think that for me, when it's understanding what you're trying to achieve and the best way to get that outcome. So, you know, one of the challenges is the bureaucracy layers that you have to work through as well, and actually understanding how you get through them in the most effective way. One of the things that's messy is don't underestimate the value of your network. So build those relationships and build those connections across a company, and that will help significantly with being able to navigate some of those paths. You know, build that network, use those influences that you have around you to be more effective. At a personal level, I don't play games, and I refuse to stoop to playing games to get the outcome. And like I said, I'm very lucky in ASC that is not part of the culture, and I don't, so it is a little bit organisation specific.
I'd say pick your company, because I've personally never worked in highly political organisations. It's not my style, it's not how I like to operate, and if I found myself in a highly political company that evolved around me, I'd move on. That's, you know, I think some of, I can only imagine, and I don't want to sort of make assumptions, but, you know, and this is certainly this is changing also in the public sector as well. I've never worked in the public sector, I've only ever worked in private organisations, but traditionally there's been a lot of politics in public organisations from a tech perspective, very hierarchical, very sort of traditional, and I imagine that those sorts of cultures are definitely being disrupted now, but that, you know, that might have been, I don't know what your personal experience has been, but yeah, that would be an observation of mine from days gone by anyway.
A follow-up question, anyone? Anywhere? Right. Down the end, Paula. Thank you.
Do you have any universities you would recommend to get started, or could you just go to any uni and see what happens, really?
I started off at Vic and I really loved it. I found it had a really supportive atmosphere, and I was one of 3 girls going through my computer science, or starting my computer science degree, with amongst hundreds of guys, right? So it was quite intimidating, but everyone was so supportive, and no one was like, "Oh, you're a girl, you can't do it." And in fact, it was kind of the opposite. So it was really nice. I can't speak to any other. I mean, Massey was also really good. I built up some really strong relationships through study groups and stuff through Massey as well. But I can't speak to any other universities.
I would personally, I liked UCOL and how they operated. I wouldn't say I have a short attention span, but I don't think I would cope well sitting in a lecture theatre listening to a 3-hour lecture on networking. I would just turn off. Whereas I loved how UCOL had the interactive labs, and you'll have a quick tutorial on something and then you're actually physically doing it, which it sort of caters to all those different learning styles, and I felt it was much easier to absorb and retain the information than just regurgitating a textbook. So I would highly recommend Polytech in that regard. And also if it applies to you, the family friendly learning hours and things, it was quite flexible, which I found really good.
Yeah. From a hiring perspective, it doesn't influence the decision I make, if that helps at all. So I think it's more important to find a course that resonates with you and is going to build that passion and that spark. I don't think pretty much all of the universities offer, various kind of, and UCOLs do offer IT type degrees. So my recommendation would be find something that actually interests you the most, because certainly from a hiring perspective, I had a great experience at Massey, but from a hiring perspective, it's like this proves that you can stick to something, that you can achieve at a higher level, and that you're intelligent. So I don't think it really impacts on the decision I make as to which university or higher education you've come from.
I think also, I just want to add that we were talking earlier about is university or is a degree even required, and I still stick by no, it's not. But I think if you are, it doesn't really matter, I think, as Sarah said, what university you go to or Polytech, but also showing that you've got experience, like you're trying out new things and you're pushing yourself to learn different techniques or languages or whatever you're interested in doing, and showcasing that, right? Because experience is just as important.
Amazing. Do we have another question from the room? Yeah, over here. Thank you. Paula will get her steps in today. It's great.
How does overseas experience help you get roles in the tech industry?
I guess other people might have a different view, but the thing about New Zealand is that for quite a while now, and including in my own case, even though we're based at the bottom part of the world, a lot of companies are actually involved in delivering global services to global customers, and we have been for a really long time. So actually, overseas experience isn't that relevant, and for the most part, for most people's jobs. I think the only thing overseas experience brings to the table that doesn't necessarily apply in New Zealand is the scale of the organisations. So you're just talking about bigger numbers of bigger customers, bigger revenue lines, or bigger teams, etc. But in terms of the complexity of the work you're doing, the problems you're trying to solve on a global stage, you can be anywhere. And in fact, obviously COVID's kind of forced the tech industry to be quite New Zealand focused in terms of still doing stuff with international customers, but with only people locally that we could hire here easily within borders. But yeah, I honestly think that there's so much going on in the industry in New Zealand more than ever before. It's very cool. And we are recognised on the global stage because there's been a lot of successful startups that have gone global and been, Xero's a really high profile organisation that's done really well on the world stage, but there are many, many others, hundreds in fact, that have done really well. So I wouldn't be worried about having to go overseas to get experience to then be more valuable. As I sort of said earlier, and this is also true, I think, of quite a few other organisations. I've managed to be involved with hundreds of international large-scale customers, but I've done that job over the years from New Zealand, and I have done lots of international travel for small stints, not like weeks on end, but days here and days there, or maybe a week or two, and that's all happened from being based out of New Zealand, because tech it's global, right? It's awesome. You don't have to do that job in a specific country. You can do it all from here.
And I think more companies are looking, like they'll advertise globally nowadays, where that was not the case, 5 years ago at all. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, time for one more question in the room.
So you guys are really impressive. Thank you very much. I'm a newbie here. I'm actually 6 months into my New Zealand management career after spending 30 years in the US in companies like you talk about. And I am so excited. The community you guys build is just fascinating and awesome, connecting individuals, leaping over university and such. I want to know, how do we do more of that in Manawatu? What can the high school students, how do they take that first step to get into tech? And what can we as managers in tech help them make that step? My 6 month start, I'm looking after the engineering teams at Objective down the road here. So committed to Manawatu, and I want to help everyone get started in tech, and I want to know how we can do that here. Thank you.
Welcome, and great question.
So, I think if you sort of learn from some of the other initiatives going on across the New Zealand industry, so a lot of it's about community and not being afraid to collaborate, and it's not about us versus them in terms of different companies. It's all about the sum of the whole is better to working together. And so particularly in a number of the, Author's included in this software as service companies. So that's, where you're basically building products and hosting those and providing the products and the services to customers. So SaaS is a massive and growing industry for the New Zealand market, and there's lots of pockets of lots of cool startup companies, big and medium companies, all doing SaaS. And so there's been initiatives kick off over the last few years around putting all those companies together to share ideas, thoughts, and kind of grow together. And so I think, particularly in the Manawatu, if this isn't already happening, you can think along those lines of those industry sort of types of groups of companies and see more of those collaborations happen, more events, more opportunities to showcase back into schools what's possible, so you can kind of capture people's imaginations about what's on their doorstep once they come through school or get involved in post high school qualifications, whatever those happen to be. So a lot of it actually is about the power of everyone working together rather than trying to do it all on your own, because that's how we'll win, and how everyone getting involved in it will be successful.
Yeah, we've got something like similar to that. Like we've got Manawatu Tech.
Manawatu.
Thank you. I always said the two. Which kind of, young people can get involved in as well. I believe they hold lots of meetups. And there's also, is it Manawatu Young Professionals?
The Chamber Network?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. I was reading a lot about them recently. So there's a lot of kind of community groups here at the moment that, if you want to get in contact with these people, if you're not already, and, ask what you can help with, and that young people or students here can attend. And there's lots of that available on, Eventbrite. They host a lot of the tickets and entry.
Yep. And there's quite a lot in the meetup, Manawatu meetups as well. So I think company to company, there's probably quite a lot of collaboration and engagement. I certainly know when I was enterprise architect at Massey, we would get together with the architects across all of the different tech companies in Palmerston North and just share ideas and collaborate a little bit. Where I think, Manawatu will play quite a pivotal role in being able to also connect industry to the education sector and be able to support the growth and promote Manawatu as a tech hub within New Zealand and bring that sort of awareness and coordination more to the front. So it's been exciting to see that be formed and start to get some traction in the Manawatu as well.
We're a pretty hospitable bunch here in the Manawatu, so you'll find a really good ecosystem, I'm sure. But we're going to have an opportunity after this for you to actually meet the people in the room, and Steve, for instance, from Manawatech, as well as our panels, and build that network right now. So, firstly, thank you to the panel. Your ability to share your journey was inspiring. And online, it's just read the comments later, they're listening. And for those of you that are not in technology and thinking about it, I think it's probably given you a lot of things to think about and consider, and to sort of understand the different people that you can go to look for advice and support. And as Sarah said, just ask. People will give you their opinions. So I just want to thank a few people. Thank you for UCOL team here today that brought you this event. Thank you to Yorb and Offer It, for letting us have the talented panellists. We know it's a big commitment, and it's also a huge thing to go to that frank place and talk about your journey, so we appreciate that you did that so eloquently. Thanks for Manawatech for locally wrangling Tech Week together. We're in day 2 or 3 now, I believe, here in the Manawatu. There are still other events planned all week, and it finishes, the big event is on Friday night, the mega meetup at the Victory Bar. Unfortunately, some people in the room won't be able to come to that, but others certainly will. For those of you online, thank you for being so active. This is my first time emceeing a real live crowd and an online crowd, and it wasn't that uncomfortable, so that worked out well. So it was great to have you here, and we've learned anything from COVID, and we've all learned something from COVID, is that you don't always have to be in person to be present. So I think these opportunities are amazing, but do jump into that virtual world. There are so many experiences out there to be had. So to our online guests, this is our time to say goodbye. For the audience that's still here, we're going to do a spot draw, but my team has disappeared, so I'm guessing we'll do that over lunch. So I would just encourage you all to come out to the
Inception.